In our last video, we came up with a functional encryption mechanism in Super Mario Maker. It was an actual encryption algorithm that provided real security. And it failed. Spectacularly. Mario Maker's brutal community mercilessly murdered this encryption algorithm the same way they had murdered every historic attempt at Mario Maker encryption so far. Within 12 hours, our unbeatable level was beaten. But whenever there is failure, there is also an opportunity to do better. And thus I meditated over our failed encryption attempt. For hours I stared at our failed encryption while the clown cars were staring back at me. I dug into the very depths of the internet. I read ancient Discord chats and old obscure Reddit threads, searching for a way to finally succeed. And it was there, in the furthest corners of the World Wide Web, that I finally encountered a potential solution to our historic problem. A potential solution that finally makes it possible to upload a truly impossible to beat level in Super Mario Maker that does not use any glitches. This level here, a level that is built around fundamental principles of chaos theory. So in this video, we're going on a journey. We'll take a look back at our previous encryption algorithm and discuss why it failed so spectacularly. We will learn from this failure and understand where we need to do better. We will dive into the core ideas of encryption and chaos theory, and in the end, we'll take our newly learned knowledge and apply it back to Super Mario Maker. So gentle ladies, gentlemen, and gentle people in general, are you ready? Then let's do this. Alrighty right, before we're able to discuss our new and improved encryption algorithm, we first have to understand what went wrong with our last design. And to understand what went wrong with our last design, we first have to chat about something else. So think about a blender. A kitchen blender, you know, one of those things where we put something in at the top that goes brrr brrr and it chops whatever we put into it into pieces. You know what a blender is. Our blender, however, is a bit different. Our blender is magical because this blender does not chop the things that we put into it into tiny pieces. Oh no, it does something much cooler. It chops everything that we put into it into numbers. But it gets even better because not only does it chop everything into numbers, it will always chop the exact same input into the exact same numbers. So if we were to throw in a mushroom, it will always chop it down to, say, 67 every single time. If we were to throw in a fire flower, it will always chop it into a 17. And if you were to throw in a fuzzy, then you are a monster and should be ashamed of yourself. Awesome. So why are we waffling about magical blenders in a video about Super Mario Maker encryption? Well, because this blender here is a central idea in modern encryption. The input that we throw into the blender is nothing else but a password. The magical blender is nothing more than a hashing algorithm, and the output number is a hashed password. You see, there is actually a quite obvious problem when it comes to using passwords online. Say we want to log in into our account for the amazing Super Mario Wiki. We need to enter our password to log in, which obviously means that the Mario Wiki has to verify that our password is actually our password. Say our password is Hammer Bros. We type Hammer Bros into the console, hit enter, and by doing so, we send our metaphorical Hammer Bro onto a journey. The Hammer Bro now walks all the way to the Super Mario Wiki headquarters, knocks at their door, is granted entrance, tells them that he is an ambassador of Ceave and that he comes to tell them that my password is indeed Hammer Bro. Then he waits there while the toad that is working at the reception is looking through all their folders, verifying that my password is indeed Hammer Bros before he issues an entrance ticket to the actual Mario Wiki, which the Hammer Bro then carries back home to me. If real-world passwords were being verified like this, then there would be a couple of very obvious security problems along the journey. The Hammer Bro, for example, could be mugged along the way by an evil criminal, which would immediately give the kidnapper the information that my password is indeed Hammer Bro. But that's just one problem. There's also the problem that my password is stored in the archives of the Mario Wiki. What if someone were to break in and steal their documents? Or what if the Mario Wiki that I sent the Hammer Bro to isn't the actual Mario Wiki, but a shady enterprise pretending to be the official Mario Wiki? Like, for example, the so-called Mario Wiki on fandom.com. If the internet were to work like this, then there would be tons of opportunities for criminals to steal our sacred Hammer Bro password. We have to prevent any of this from happening. The solution? Well, the solution is our magical blender. All that we have to do before sending our hammer bro onto the way is to forcefully put it into the blender and to mix it into a bloody pool of randomized numbers. As long as these numbers can't be calculated back to the word hammer bro, a criminal that kidnaps them along the way can't do anything with them. The Mario Wiki never learns our true password, but only the number soup that we mixed our hammer bro into. And if an imposter were to try to steal our password, then all that they would steal would be useless hammer bro number pieces. The idea is to take an input, the actual password, and to somehow mix it into something new. The important thing is that the result of our blending operation gives no hint at what our original ingredients were. This process is called hashing, and it is a central idea in encryption, which raises a very obvious question: how to do something like this in Super Mario Maker? Well, this is where our clown car lock failed so spectacularly. You see, in theory, our clown car lock is such an encryption blender. We took an input, a series of Mario either going through the door to the right or to the left for 65 times in a row, and chopped this input up into different numbers by translating them to a position on the RNG ladder using the blinking animation of clown cars. So where did all of this go south? Well, our mistake was trying to use the position on the RNG ladder as the final result of our hashing operation. You see, the RNG ladder can, by design, only be moved along in steps of 1. Because of this, it is not possible to reach incredibly large numbers on it. The variation of different steps that our clown car lock reached on the ladder was in a magnitude of several thousands, which means we took 2 to the power of 65 possible inputs and translated all of them to only a couple of thousand different numbers. If different inputs end up being chopped up into the same number, however, this is called a hash collision, and our clown car lock unfortunately ended up being hash collision the Mario Maker level. To unlock the stage, people only had to find one of the millions of inputs that resulted in the correct hash, which is trivial for a modern computer. There was also weakness in the problem that we used to generate the hash, but that one might have been fixable. The insane amount of hash collisions, however, is not. There's simply no two ways around it. The RNG ladder is a trap. No matter how clever a program we might manage to come up with, if we use the RNG ladder to hash our problem, then we will never be able to generate enough different hashes to get anywhere near a truly secure encryption. We need to come up with a better hashing algorithm. And with this, it is already time for us to talk about chaos theory and chaotic systems. So there is this one famous example about chaos theory that pretty much everyone has heard before, that a tiny action, like for example Mario randomly bonking into a lamppost in Metro City can, if we give it enough time, have devastating consequences, like causing a terrible thunderstorm years later on the other side of the planet in Donkey Kong Bonanza. The idea is that we have a system, in this case the global weather system, that has an initial state, in this case the current global weather. If we were to make a single change to the initial state of the current weather system, like changing the air circulation a tiny bit by randomly bonking into a lamppost, it will, give me enough time, completely change how the entire system plays out. Chaotic systems are systems like this. Systems in which even a tiny change to their initial state will cause gigantic ripple effects down the road. And chaos theory is the academic field that studies such systems. So why is this relevant to us? Well, because Mario Maker is actually a surprisingly good tool to simulate such systems. Take a look at this level. Here we have a simple room that we're going to call a chaos chamber. All that there is a seesaw platform, a single spring on tracks, and a moving claw. Alongside these items, we load 3 Goombas into the room, and that's it. What happens if we start this room? Well, chaos obviously. The Goombas are randomly pushed around by the other objects. Cool. What is so special about these bouncing Goombas? Well, check this out. Let's take a fire flower and let's add it to the chaos. The result? Well, the result is once again chaos, of course. However, it is a different kind of chaos that ensues if a fire flower is added to the mix. If we let the system run for merely 10 seconds after adding a single fire flower, then the state of the system ends up being completely different. Here is where this gets really amazing. Let's take this fire flower and let's move it 2 blocks to the left. Take a look at this. Do you notice it? unbelievable, I know. The entire system all of a sudden acts completely differently, just because we moved a single fire flower 2 blocks to the left. I really cannot stress enough how unbelievably awesome this is. This here is literally one of the biggest scientific breakthroughs in the history of Super Mario Maker. Here's the thing, if we drop the fire flower from this tile, then 10 seconds later the Goombas will be at these spots. We can mark the tiles where the Goombas end up. If we drop the fire flower from here, however, well then the Goombas end up on these spots. We can mark those as well. So this fire flower position leads to this Goomba position 10 seconds later, and that fire flower position leads to this Goomba positions. Awesome. So are you ready to get your mind blown? Here's the plot twist. Instead of marking the spots with a little X, we can instead write a 1 on the spot where we dropped the item from and where the enemies ended up, and a 0 on all the other spots. Do you see where this is headed? Gentle ladies, gentlemen, and gentle people in general? This is a hashing function. It takes a binary number, here the position of one or several fire flowers, and then chops this input into a completely different number, here encoded into a matrix via the position of our Goombas. This here is a hashing algorithm. This is a hashing algorithm that uses the fact that chaotic systems behave completely differently if there is any change made to their initial state. It is an encryption algorithm in Super Mario Maker, built upon chaos theory. All that we have to do now is to translate this idea into an actual level. And luckily for us, this has already been done. Huge shout out to Mario Maker creator Wormslayer, because he originally came up with the idea of using chaotic systems to generate an encrypted level, and even figured out how to translate all of this into an actual stage. He uploaded this stage almost 2 years ago, a legendary Super Mario Maker level fittingly named Forever Unclear 2 No Glitch RNG. And as it turns out, Forever Unclear 2 is, as a matter of fact, still uncleared. Here's how it works. At the beginning, there are 38 blocks containing items that we can trigger. These are our possible inputs. After a while, bob-ombs drop from the sky and destroy all the blocks above, dropping our item combinations into a chaos chamber. Inside this chaos chamber, there are 5 bob-ombs, alongside our input items. After a while, a P-switch gets activated. For the lock to be unlocked, these 5 bob-ombs have to be at the exact positions of these coins when the timer expires. Only then, all the bob-ombs get destroyed, while also destroying the other blocks during the process. So why is this level only beatable if the physics simulation ends up with the bob-ombs at exactly these positions? Well, because there is a clear condition set, a clear condition to kill all bob-ombs. Mario's beloved flagpole simply refuses to appear as long as any bob-omb is still alive. The only way to get the physics simulation to a state in which all bob-ombs are at the correct position at just the right time is to use the exact same input items as Wormslayer used when uploading the level. Wormslayer, however, was able to just randomly throw some items into the machine to take a screenshot of where they ended up at the end of the simulation and then to place the P-blocks accordingly. We, however, can't calculate which items he had used just by looking at where the bob-ombs ended up in his simulation without trying every single input ourselves. And yeah, it's been almost 2 years and the level has not yet been beaten. It is an incredible achievement in Super Mario Maker cryptography. However, there is actually a chance that this level will eventually be beaten. You see, there are 2 to the power of 38 possible input states, which are roughly 270 billion different input combinations. This is way too much to manually crack the lock. A modern computer, however, well, modern GPUs can calculate up to a quadrillion calculations per second. A modern computer can easily calculate all these possible input states. To do this, we would first have to implement the entire physics system of Super Mario Maker in an algorithm, which is far from a trivial task, but at least theoretically it is still possible to decipher this lock. If we truly want to come up with a secure encryption algorithm in Super Mario Maker that even a modern supercomputer can't defeat, then we have to find a way to scale this encryption algorithm. Which finally brings us to the point of this silly little video. This here is a level simply called a well-kept Ceavecrete. A well-kept Ceavecrete is an iteration upon a design that Wormslayer originally came up with. It is pretty much Forever Unclear 2, but bigger. Much bigger. The level consists of two pretty simple parts, an upper part where we input our password and a chaos chamber at the bottom in which we verify the inputs we used before. Let's first talk about the chaos chamber. Here it is. Our chaos chamber simply consists of 7 claws and 3 seesaw platforms. At the bottom there are tons of note blocks as well as a couple of conveyor belts. At the top there are 17 Goombas and a single red Koopa. The goal of the stage is to defeat those 17 Goombas as well as the Koopa, because the Koopa carries the exit key. To win the level, we have to input a code into the chaos simulation that causes these 18 entities to be exactly on the spots marked by the red on-off blocks when a timer expires. Let's overlay the footage of a star and a fire flower being dropped into the chaos simulation, both at the same tile, while we chat about the machine, so that you can see that it picks up even small changes to its initial state and amplifies them. In the final level, we run the simulation for roughly half a minute before validating its final state. The chaos room is 23 by 15 blocks large, which is pretty much the maximum size that allows us to still see the position of the Goombas, which is a requirement for us to be able to program the lock in the first place. So there are 345 possible coordinations in the room, and each one of the 18 Goombas could theoretically end up at each of these 345 tiles, which gives us 345 to the power of 18 possible end states for the simulation, which are roughly 4.5 quattordecillion possible hash states that the physics simulation can reach. If you haven't counted up to a quattordecillion in a while, it is a number with 45 zeros. This here is the exact number, which is to say there is plenty of potential hash outputs. Cool, so this is our chaos contraption, which already brings us to the other part of the level, the password input. At the start of the level, we pick up a stylish shell mat and are then transported into this room. And then we input our password. Up there are a total of 165 blocks that we can use to set our input number by breaking them. Alright, so we settled for our favorite binary string out of these 46 quindecillion possibilities and are ready to bounce some Goombas around. What next? Well, next we walk through this door. This door takes us to the top of the level. Up here we trigger an on-off block, and as soon as we flip this switch, the calculation begins. We flip the switch, the contraption activates. We wish our players good luck, and then Mario drops down. He drops down past the blocks we just destroyed before, but would you look at this? The blocks that we previously destroyed are all of a sudden transformed into different power-ups and drop down alongside Mario directly into our chaos chamber. Here they cause chaos until we test for the state of the contraption and oh no, we didn't guess the correct input number. Maybe next time. That's all that there is. So how did we transform the broken brick blocks into enemies? Well, that's actually surprisingly simple. You see, the blocks were simply spawn blocking enemies and power-ups. Once the blocks were destroyed, the items were suddenly able to load the next time the room was entered, which happens to be when we fall from the ceiling. There is a hidden P-switch trigger out of sight that activates as soon as all items are loaded, causing them to fall into the contraption and that's it. That is all that is to this machine. There's just one final upgrade that we have to add to the stage. We place a 2-player detector at the start of the level because I'm lazy and I do not want to debug the whole thing so that it doesn't break down as soon as 2 players enter the level. This little contraption here helps us with that. It only opens up when a single player enters the level because the progressive power-up spawns as a mushroom in the single player mode but as a fire flower when we are in multiplayer, making it impossible to enjoy the combination lock with friends. And that's it. This here is what I believe to be the most secure combination lock ever created in Super Mario Maker. So how safe is this lock? Well, we can actually estimate this. So let's assume that the Mario Maker community manages to write an algorithm that is so unbelievably clever and optimized that it manages to run our entire Chaos Chamber simulation 1 trillion times per second, which would be pretty impossible, but given that we're talking about the Mario Maker community, after all, is not unreasonable. So 1 trillion per 60 gives us how many checks it does per minute, and this per 60 gives us how many checks it does per hour. Let's multiply this by 24, and we know that such an algorithm could check roughly 90 quadrillion possible input combinations per day. So if we divide our 2 to the power of 165 possible input combinations by 90 quadrillion, we know for how many days such an algorithm would have to run to brute force our fun little Mario Maker project. It is this many days. Yep, It is more than the age of the universe, and then a lot. So I've learned the hard way to never underestimate the Mario Maker community, but I believe not even they are this patient. Gentle ladies, gentlemen, and gentle people in general, here we have it. Chaos Theory applied to Super Mario Maker to create a secure Mario Maker encryption mechanism and a video that is probably going to cause late night emergency meetings at Team 0%'s headquarters. Before we wrap this up, just two more things. So first, as always, a gigantic thank you to all my wonderful patrons whose names are currently floating by. These wonderful people not only regularly get access to small additional videos and scripts, but their generous support is the input that makes chaos like this possible in the first place. A huge thank you to them for that. Second, I thought that now that I taught all of you how to upload an actually securely encrypted algorithm to Super Mario Maker servers, it might be a good time to ask the question whether teaching all of you that is actually a good idea or not. You see, do we actually destroy any chance the Team 0% has to ever clear every level uploaded to Mario Maker 2 by sharing how a chaos lock is built publicly? And the answer is, I do not think so. I actually think it is the opposite. You see, these levels are already out there. We talked about Wormslayer's level in the video, but there are many more. Wormslayer himself even updated his own original lock during the production of this video, using a very similar design to ours. There is a really clever level online created by jarivi that combines obscure Mario Maker tech, RNG manipulation and chaos locks to create a level that has also not been cleared yet. There is another slightly different chaos lock online by another pioneer researcher in the field called Fast SSM2. His lock goes by the wonderful name of Ceave Gaming, and there are probably many more. I put the IDs to all those levels into the description if you want to check them out. Alright, so the point is the following. Chaos locks already do exist. It doesn't matter for Project 0% how many of them are out there, because if there is one out there that they cannot beat, then they cannot fulfill their sacred mission. If they find a way to beat one of those levels, however, if they find a way to clear one of them, then they very likely found a way to clear all of them. For example, if they manage to somehow figure out a way to beat a well-kept Ceavecrete, then I'm almost certain we can also solve Forever Unbeatable too. So I actually think the chances for these levels to ever get beaten do rise if you get a couple of additional people interested in the matter, not the other way around. Hooray! Awesome! So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this silly little video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and maybe you feel especially chaotic today and want to hit the subscribe button as well. Finally, if you truly loved the video and want to support content like this, then there's also the option to support the channel via Patreon. See you next time, and lots of hugs.